I'm Jamie Jackson. In this episode, my guest today is Karine Jean-Pierre, the former White House press secretary whose new book, Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines, has quickly become a bestseller. In it, she reflects on her time in the Biden administration, her decision to step outside the Democratic Party while still holding to its values, and her belief that protecting democracy requires action from every American. Jean-Pierre also speaks personally about what she witnessed inside the White House and why she believes the party she served must do more to meet the current political moment. Karine Jean-Pierre, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show.
So when you look back at the 3 weeks before President Biden withdrew, was there a moment when you knew that the public was maybe seeing something between the debate and the time he withdrew that maybe you weren't allowed to acknowledge in terms of anything you were feeling or seeing leading up to the moment where he decided that he was going to drop out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did not know he was going to drop out. I really didn't. In the book, I lay out pretty step by step what I was going through those 3 weeks, and that day that he dropped out. I was surprised. I even talk about how he is a proud Irish man who is always a fighter, even when he's knocked down. So I assumed, okay, he's just going to continue and push through. And it wasn't until I got on a conference call with senior members of the White House team and the campaigns team, and he came on and he made the announcement. And I was pretty shocked. I was pretty floored by his decision. And so that's how I learned. But I do give the blow by blow in the book, and I hope people take an opportunity to read it. And I think you could feel what I was feeling in the moment.
So when you made the decision to leave the Democratic Party, in a lot of ways, you're still aligned with Democratic values, but you say that the party's lost its soul. So what does it mean to be aligned but outside?
Yeah, and look, I appreciate the opportunity to explain that because it is very nuanced. And so, look, I do want to talk about the moment, and that's what the book is. I mean, it's really primarily about the moment that we're in and how do we move forward. And look, as a Black woman that's part of the queer community, as an immigrant, what I'm seeing from the Democratic Party is pretty disheartening. And what I mean by that is there is this direction of the leadership to really focus on what's poll tested well, right? What issues that poll test well, and how do they talk about certain issues that's middle of the road? And I'm thinking to myself, there are people who are suffering out there. There are people who are being attacked. There are people who are afraid. When I left the White House, the Biden-Harris administration, I had so many people who were coming up to me and saying, Karine, what do we do? What's going on with the Democratic Party? Why aren't they fighting? Project 2025, anti-DEI, the federal government. All these things were happening, and we knew they were coming. Project 2025, they didn't hide that. And the fact that I felt as if the Democratic leadership was not prepared. And they rubber stamped Trump's nominees. They just rubber stamped nominees that were not equipped or qualified, giving up their power. And so when you have a leadership that is behaving as if they don't have any power and then give it up at the beginning of the Trump administration, it's kind of scary. What do you think is going to happen to all of us? We're 10 months into this administration. Almost 50% of Project 2025 is completed. And so for me, it was, okay, how do I take a conversation or this moment and create a conversation? And we have to take the power in DC, in the White House, and we have to take that out and put it in the hands of the American people. So yes, I still very much align with the Democratic Party, but I want to push my party from the outside to do more.
Now, looking back, was there ever a question from reporters that you'd wish you'd answered more directly or maybe even more honestly during your time at the White House?
So I will say this, being the White House press secretary was a complete honor and a privilege. Just think about it. I was the first person to look like me and to walk into the communities, the different communities that I belong to stand at the podium and be behind that lectern and speak for the most powerful person in the world. And I always say what's happening in the press briefing room is not for just for the country, but it's globally. It is televised around the world. And the only reason I became White House press secretary is because Joe Biden believed in me and thought, hey, you know what? You are more than qualified to do this job. And I also want to meet the moment. And I did that job to the best of my abilities. I always was truthful. I always tried to answer the questions to the best the way that I can. And I tried to do that by representing the administration. And so I do not regret it. I do not, I would do it all over again if I was asked, two and a half years ago to be White House press secretary. I would do it all over again. And look, I was not perfect. None of us were perfect. No White House would ever say, besides the current one, we got everything right. Definitely, we're not perfect. We're not perfect people, but I did everything truthfully, honestly, and to the best of my abilities.
Now, I want to talk about something that has, since President Biden has left the White House, has been making headlines. I had an opportunity to speak with Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes when their book Fight came out. And it's regarding the decline in terms of President Biden's capacity to serve and mentally. What would you have done if you had seen a decline? Because you've been very clear
Yeah.
about how you feel the president's mindset and ability to do the job was. And you're very clear about that in the book. But if you had seen something, what would you have done?
I mean, Jamie, it's hard. One of the things that I don't want to go down a rabbit hole to a hypothetical. I mean, it's just not, I don't think it's enough for me is an effective way to move forward. What I can speak to is what I saw at the time and what I experienced. I'm talking about my experience as someone who saw him on a daily basis. And I've always been very clear, like, yes, he aged. No one said he didn't age. He would joke about it. He walked slower. He spoke softly, and he aged. I mean, this was a president that did that right before our eyes. And not only that, people had known him through his Senate years, his vice president years. So you saw it. There's nothing that we can hide about that. It was in plain sight. But he was someone, when I spent time with him, when I would talk to him about what was going on in my portfolio, he was sharp, he was on top of things, and he understood history, and he would go back and forth and he would push us. I mean, dealing with Joe Biden on a daily basis was someone who held us to a great accountability and made sure that we were focusing on our work. And that was my experience with Joe Biden.
Now, your book is a bestseller. And to be honest, in visiting bookstores, because when I read books and when I prepare for interviews, I like to just kind of see, what the people are saying or who's reading what book. Your book is sold out in a lot of bookstores. Why do you think there's such an interest in what you have to say? And for those who haven't gotten your book yet, why should they read it?
Well, I appreciate that question as well, because I think what I experienced the first couple of months coming out of the administration, which is the reason I wrote the book, to be quite honest, is hearing from people. People are scared, Jamie. People are frightened. People are worried. They're worried about the people that they love. They worry about themselves. And there's not a clear direction. What's the strategy to get out of this? What is it? I'm not hearing from leadership, from Democratic leadership. What is it? How do we get out of this? And now the government is shut down, which, by the way, I actually give credit to Democrats for holding the line, even though this is going to be a tough time for many, many people. I mean, you're hearing about SNAP and how that the millions of people who are going to suffer from that. There are veterans who are going to suffer. There are seniors who need program that they won't have pretty soon. The thing in this moment is we're about to head to a healthcare crisis. And if the Democrats don't stand up, then we're going to be even in a worse situation. Now, what needs to happen is they have to make sure that they hold Republicans to account. They have to say Republicans have the White House, the House, and the Senate. They own this shutdown. They own it. The Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson, is basically saying we've shut down the government and everybody in Congress is on vacation. That's the message. They have to make sure that the message is clear because they could open it back up. They can. The Republicans, the House Speaker can open it back up, but they're refusing to do that. And so we're in this moment that is a moment that I've never seen in my lifetime. Our democracy is hanging by a thread. Where some people would say we have stepped into an authoritarian regime, and we have to do the work now. We won't have a 2028 if we don't do the work now. 2026, he's trying to steal it. 2025 even. There's reports of him saying he's going to send DOJ is going to monitor elections in California and other places. That is scary. And so my book, to get to your question, my book I believe is a roadmap for Americans out there in how to stay engaged and get involved. That is the point of the book, to have a conversation. And that's how I want to use my platform.
When you were writing the book, what was the hardest sentence to leave in? And what do you think was the hardest one to cut out?
That's a good question. I have to think about that. Look, I think in any book, and this book was written, I had to write this book very quickly. It took like 2 months, which is insane. That's not the way you're supposed to do it, but I really wanted to meet the moment and really felt like it was important for me to speak out loud to what was happening. And so try to do that. I mean, look, anytime you're going back to a difficult time, it's hard, right? It's hard. I talk about my mom in the book. I talk about experiences that I had personally myself with my own colleagues. That's always difficult. And saying that I'm an independent now, it's not easy, right? I was part of the Democratic Party my whole entire career. So I don't take any of this lightly. I don't. But we are in unprecedented times, and I'm worried. I'm worried for the people that I love, the communities that I love, and I really truly believe we need to take action. And if it's trying to start an uncommon conversation, then I'm okay with that. If it's starting the conversation.
And finally, if you could stand at that White House podium just one more time and speak directly to the American people, what would you say?
Oh my gosh, like right now in this moment, I would say in order to have a democracy that works for everyone and to make sure that our freedoms are protected, we have to work at it every day, every single day. And, the president used to say something, President Joe Biden used to say something that would hit me in his speeches. And he would say, and I'm paraphrasing, this is a young democracy. And if we don't fight for it, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it. And that would be the message that I would want to send to the American people right now. And, one of the things that gives me hope and encourages me is when I saw the No Kings rally just a couple weekends ago, where 7 million people showed up. It was the third one of this year, so it grew by the millions. That gave me hope because people are coming out together in community and saying, we do not want what is happening currently at the White House. We do not want a king. We do not want a dictatorship. And that is the fight. That is the fight that we have to continue to push forward.
Karine Jean-Pierre's book, Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines, is out now and is already a bestseller. Make sure you get your copy. She calls it a roadmap for Americans to stay engaged and get involved, and says the work of protecting democracy has to happen every single day. Of course, you can listen to this conversation again anytime by subscribing to the AURN News podcast. For AURN News, I'm Jamie Jackson.